And I know you're a big Bitcoin bull, like an investor in Bitcoin. And one of the things that I struggle with is how do you value this? Because we're really looking at something. I come from investing in stocks, the PE ratio, cash flow. What sort of metrics are you looking at to try and value Bitcoin, or how do you even think about that whole school of thought of how do we value these network values of crypto assets?
Yeah, so I don't really worry about it. It's a very binary outcome to me, right? It's either going to be worth multiples of where it is today in US dollars, or it's going to be worth zero in US dollars. But to me, it's not so much about like, is it overvalued or undervalued today? I've got opinions about it, but that's kind of misses the mark, I think, in terms of the bigger picture. And I don't trade, and that's been something that I've been pretty consistent with, from the beginning. It's just I'm not a trader. I know that I'm not a good trader. I don't want to trade. I don't want that stress, and so I basically have converted some portion of my net worth into Bitcoin. That I believe is a good insurance policy or a good hedge, and I'll just wait it out and see what happens. Either it ends up being worth a lot or ends up being worth zero, but I don't think it kind of just hangs out at, what is it, $7,500 or whatever, forever.
And so if you're putting a significant portion of your net worth in here, and holding it at, let's say, call it 130 billion network value, like how do you even ballpark why that's a good valuation to keep so much of your net worth in? And how do you even think about what would make it too high or too low?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying, right? It's like I don't worry about, is it too high, is it too low? Like it's such an outsized potential outcome that if you said to me, would is 10,000, 7,500, or 5,000 different, or more beneficial right now? Where's the value? What's overvalued, undervalued? I'd say it doesn't matter. Like whether you buy Bitcoin at 5,000, 7,500, or $10,000, it's either going to zero or it's going to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in US dollar value. And so that asymmetric upside is every dollar that you put in, that you convert to this digital currency, the floor of your investment is 1x. You can lose all your money. It could go to zero, right? But the upside is very asymmetric. It's hundreds of percent of appreciation on the upside if it works. And so I just don't think that you want to get into a game of like, oh, I don't want to buy it because that's 7,500, but like if it drops to 7,200, I'll buy it. Like if it's going to zero or it's going to 100,000+ dollars, whether you bought it at 72 or 7,500 is not going to matter.
Totally. And I'm a long-term investor. I'm in the same camp. Like I bought like 3,000, 10,000, 500, 600, just holding. But at the same time, like I have these models in my head, like, okay, digital gold to me is like one stage of this. Maybe it doesn't get totally adopted, but that's maybe 5 trillion. So we're looking 20 to 30x upside. Okay, maybe 20, 25 trillion if this really starts to become used with some layer two solutions. Sort of those two, the kind of buckets of like bull case scenarios you're thinking about when you're like, this is the multiples on my money from where we are at today.
Yeah, I tend to think the reason why I'm kind of so bullish on this and think it's so asymmetric is similar to how Uber was a market expanding technology, right? If most people looked at Uber in the beginning, they would have said, "How big is the taxi industry? Oh, what if you could replace the entire taxi industry?" Well, taxi industry is really not that big, right? But what Uber did was it didn't just attack the taxi industry; it attacked private cars. It even attacked just general car ownership, right? A lot of people don't even own cars; they just use Uber all the time. So it expanded that market or the addressable market. Airbnb, same thing, right? It expanded the market. It took market share from hospitals or from hotels and other things. And so I think that Bitcoin is very similar here in that it's not just can it replace gold? Can it replace the dollar? Can it replace this? It's actually what's all the money in the world, and can it actually be bigger than that? And the reason is right now, fiat currencies incentivize you to spend your money, right? If you sit and you just hold cash, that cash will lose value over time. And so what you are systematically forced to do is either have your money devalued or to put it into consumption, right? So buy goods and services, or invest it into inflation hedge assets, things like real estate, stocks, whatever. And so what I think Bitcoin can do is basically say to people, look, we can take market share back from all of those other asset classes, right? So Murad Mahabdev came on the podcast very early on and said, look, his thought process here was that Bitcoin could be $150 trillion asset. And when you think about that, that sounds asinine. I mean, literally sounds crazy, right? That would be pretty much, what would that be? 800x from here, right? I mean, just nuts. But when he explained it, he said, well, if all of a sudden you could just save your wealth in your currency, so you're not incentivized to have to go invest it, you can simply just save. Then what happens is you start to steal market share from real estate, from art, from other asset classes back into the core currency. And we had that for a really long time. But obviously when we broke off the gold standard and started to get into this fiat world, that kind of went away. And so I think that's part of the value here and why I'm so bullish on it potentially increasing so much.